everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today I'm interviewing Mr. Calvin Simpson about his new book, Life Through the Eyes of a Smile, which is a very good book about being positive, and there's a lot of gold nuggets in this book. So welcome, Calvin. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. It's pretty cool. I've got my name on a book. Pretty excited for that. And big old smiley face too. Big important piece there. How's your day starting off?
Today is going great. It's very positive. I've had some positive carbs in my life today, this morning, and we can also talk about what that is for all you viewers out there. Wonderful. So, all right. So for everybody watching this video out here, what is Life Through the Eyes of a Smile?
Absolutely. So Life Through the Eyes of a Smile is a book as well as a lifestyle. So really the short and sweet of it is when we get to the end of our life and we're looking if we've lived a successful life or not. It's not going to be defined by the cars, the money, really the block we live on, the job titles that we've had. Ultimate success in life and life through the eyes of a smile is really weighed by the quality and quantity of smiles that you've achieved over a lifetime. And so the principles within Life Through the Eyes of a Smile are all about how we can bring more smiles into our day every single day.
Wonderful, wonderful. So if you've read this book already, you know that it starts off with a very good story that grabs your attention. And a lot of people in our lives, we go through some sort of pivotal moment that kind of lifts us up off our tracks and gets us started to a new way. So would you like to maybe lightly touch base for all those looking out there, what inspired this book for you to write it?
Yeah, for sure. So 6 years ago, May Long Weekend, I had a very impactful moment in my life, which definitely set me on the path that I am now. And without that, I definitely wouldn't have had this book and wouldn't have searched for that deeper meaning within life. So it was 6 years ago, I was assaulted with a baseball bat and I spent about 7 days in a hospital. And over those 7 days, it was a very, very rough time. For me, even going in hospitals now is a very tough thing. I find they're just completely void of energy. And for myself, I really flourish off energy. So if I'm in a room full of people who are very energetic, that does great things for me. And if I'm in a room full of people and the energy is low, it's really hard for me to actually pick up or that energy. So the 7 days in the hospital weren't all terrible. There was one part I'd always look forward to in my day, and that was getting up and going for a walk. And there was one ward that wasn't completely void of energy, and that ward was the Stollery Children's Hospital at the University of Alberta. Now, I was in the intensive care, and I was one of the worst off in there. So I had all the reason from the adult's perspective to feel down about myself, and I absolutely was. So coming back to going for a walk every single day, I'd go into the Stollery, and there's actually an energy still in the ward. And of course, not all the time. These kids have very terrible things going on with them. But what I found incredibly inspiring was they had all the reason from the adult's perspective to feel bad about themselves in their day, but they refused to subscribe to that mentality. And they could still have a laugh in their day and they could still have a smile, where you would just never see that in the adults ward. So for me, this was a real big inspiration, and it really got a question in my mind in the simplest form of how some people can be walking down the street, stub their toe, and have the worst day of their week, while others can be going through some very, very tough situations in life and still find that happiness. So coming out of that pretty terrible experience has really driven me to this Life Through the Eyes of a Smile, and it's all about really maximizing every single day. And yes, we might have bad things happen to us in the day, but there are ways that we can get around that. And I highly accredit it to that time in the hospital and those little heroes who are in there, who have, again, all the reason from the adult's perspective to feel down about themselves, but they just don't subscribe to that mentality, and they can still have some smiles in their day and really have some laughter. So that was the moment about 6 years ago, and it's driven me to where I am today, and take a lot of inspiration from youth who are going through tough times.
I think that is so important to keep a positive mentality, and especially looking at those kids in the hospital that have everything to be worried about, but yet they're so positive and lighthearted and sweet. So that's definitely a good viewpoint to kind of step into their shoes and be like, well, things aren't really that bad, so I should be positive about things.
Yeah, for sure. I find just a saying that I kind of have in my mind is, if I'm having a bad day, it doesn't take too long for me to look around and find someone who's in a worse off place than me with a bigger smile on my face. So that's something I like to think about when I think I'm having a bad day, is to really look at others around me. And if I can't find someone close by who has a bigger smile on their face, just think back to the time where I was at the hospital and these kids who have some pretty terrible things going on with them, and take inspiration from them, and they can still actually find those happy points in their day. Granted, not every day, but most of the time.
I think that is so cool. And you're very wise to write a book about being positive, because being positive can seem like the hardest thing on earth to be like when you see a lot of people who aren't positive. But, just flipping around and having a smile on your face really has a big impact upon you and other people. So for everybody watching out there, there's a lot of good chapters, and Calvin and I actually connected over LinkedIn of all places, which we'll get to that later as well. Your network is your net worth, so you want to be connected with smart people and business people if you're in that realm. So Calvin and I are on the same wavelength, so that's why we're connected. We're both business people. So one of my favorite chapters that I really like in this book is called WTF, and you wouldn't think that it's called what WTF really means. So the way Calvin describes it is something completely different. So Calvin, for everybody watching out there, what does WTF mean?
For sure. It means just kidding. Where WTF came from was when I was explaining a concept, and I can actually still remember the moments. It was about a year and a half ago, and I forget exactly what I was explaining, but what I do vividly remember is the look on the other person's face when I was explaining it. I thought I did a really good job, but by the expression on their face, they had the WTF. Are you talking about, Calvin? So it was clear I didn't get my point across, and I tried a few more times and it just was not working. So I went home at the end of the day and I was reflecting on that situation and really thinking how I could do a better job. And really, this wasn't the first time it happened in my life. So I looked at the acronym of WTF, since it really kind of burned into my mind, and had a good laugh at the person's face and dissected it into a way I could use it going forward to really explain myself better. So what the W stands for is, where are you coming from? So when you're explaining a brand new idea, it's very important the person understands really how you came about with that idea. So it's really the past that has led up to this point in time now. So where are you coming from? The T would be the technicalities, or what makes it so special today. And then the F would be the future, or going forward, is really where do you want to go with this idea. So if we talk about the book, where I was coming from. So I had that instance 6 years ago in my life where I was in a very self-reflective moment, thought there must be really a better way, or some way that we can actually find smiles in our day, even though we're having a tough day. So that's really where I'm coming from. It was that specific event in the hospital, and then really we're here now about 6 years later. So what makes it special today is really diving into these concepts to come up with ways that is really unique to explain to people, and they get stuck in their minds. So when we're talking about this WTF, it really sticks in your mind because the acronym is so often used, is, you know what it means. But that's really what makes the book special, is those everyday examples where it can actually burn into the mind. And then F for the book would be where it's actually going. So I have a podcast coming up right away, which would be more of the continuation of Life Through the Eyes of a Smile. And it really is a actual concept that we can take into our day. So it's just a continual rolling picture there. So that's really the WTF. So it helps you understand, or helps the other person understand where you're coming from, what makes it special today, and then where you actually want to go with the idea. So I find it's an important piece of framing to keep in mind whenever we're talking to someone brand new idea.
I think that's wonderful. So WTF, where, technicalities, and future. So this is a very good thing to implement if you're having conversations with people and they may look at you at like WTF, be like, well, WTF. So anyhow, one of my next favorite chapters is talking about, would your mom approve of the people you're hanging out with, and why it's important to get around the right people and hang around the right people, because they have such big influence on you. So would you like to kind of dive into that chapter a little bit for all those viewers out there?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a big interest in surrounding myself with people who have a very similar mindset who can really take me forward. These are people who have done really great things. These are people who are about to do really great things. Just very positive influences in a person's life, and they can really give me a direction on where I need to go. Now, I'm not going to surround myself with all of these people. Really, where we've come from, which would be typically where we are right now in the millennial generation, we have a lot of friends that are still really from our high school or that we've grown up with. And even as we go on to life, we still have a bunch of these friends who we've known for quite a while, and some of them definitely aren't the best influences. So when we're talking about the people our mom wouldn't approve of, these are the friends that we typically have a really strong connection with, and that we've had this connection for quite a long while, but they really don't have they really don't give us the best advice on actually living that better life. So a lot of the time the defaults here is to actually go to, well, just remove these people from life. And I'm sure if we all think about this right now of someone that we've been told, you know what, they're not going to ever change, you need to just remove them from your life. Typically this stems from someone you've known for a very long time and that you have a deep connection with. And the person giving you the advice just to kick them out of your life only sees the side of the picture, and that's the bad influence side. They don't see the times that you've shared together, the deep connection that you've had. And these are probably people you have deep connections with the most in your life. So these are people that really your mom doesn't approve of. And so where this advice comes in to just kick them out, I'm not one for this just general knowledge or these general statements out there. And I find like this one here is really, happiness is yours if you just choose to accept it. And for me, it's a great motivational saying, but we really need to dig deeper into it. That's where the book comes up. So when we hear sayings like, well, you just need to remove this person from your life if they're not positive, I don't take that information. I want to dig into it further. So where we get at with the people our mom wouldn't approve of is we don't want to kick them out of our life, but really we're not going to be taking real big life advice from them. So I'd like to compare this to a NASCAR pick who is we have our race days where we're really looking to perform higher. And this is, you could be advancing in personal development and advancing in your business. You're not going to take advice from the people our mom would approve of on those situations. This would be considering it our actual race day. Those people are going to be on the outside as fans, really just spectating on the inside. So we need to have that close network of people who we can take advice from really on the personal development or business development side of our lives, but we're also going to have those friends who are really just meant to watch. So the basis of this is don't kick those people out of your life who you've built a great emotional connection with and share a ton of memories. Just really heed the advice you're taking on more of the developmental side of things.
I think that's great. So one of my other favorite concepts from this book is the good carbs and the bad carbs. And here we're not talking about the food you eat, but it's rather something else for a mental diet. So food for thought, rather. So how would you compare and contrast good carbs and bad carbs in Life Through the Eyes of a Smile?
For sure, good carbs and bad carbs. So when I was talking a bit there about just big general statements, a lot of the time people pick up the book, they see the big smile on the front and Life Through the Eyes of a Smile. They come to me, ask for advice, and without actually reading the book and getting into it, they think that, well, anything that just puts on a smile on your face is really the way to go. So I really want to dig deeper into this and separate smiles into two basic areas. So good carb smiles and bad carb smiles. And a lot of the time I get people say, well, Calvin, I'm sitting on the couch watching Netflix. It's absolutely amazing. I'm living life through the eyes of a smile. I've got this thing. I don't need to read the book. We're all good to go. For me, that's a bad carb. So when we look at real short duration pleasures that put a smile on our face, yes, it brings that smile in the short term. But if we look at the long-term game, it really doesn't buy us much in the terms of fulfillment in our life. Whereas if you look at good carb smiles, these are things that are a bit harder to do now, but really have big returns in the future. So this could be something like working out, reading a new book, stuff that really leads to that future investment in yourself. So you put a bit of time in now and it really pays off in the future to those more high quality carb smiles and the higher fulfillment in our lives. So yes, sitting on the couch watching Netflix does bring a smile to our face. That's really one of those bad carb smiles. We want to look at substituting some of that time out for items in our life, which would be much more good carb smiles or provide us fulfillment in the long term.
Wonderful. And I think good carbs are always important. So a healthy diet of good carbs will take you a lot farther than bad carbs. So for all those viewers out there, you should definitely pick up this book and read the chapter about good carbs and bad carbs, because there's a lot of good information inside about good carbs. So in Calvin's book, he references a lot of powerful people, books, psychologists, and just overall good information that you should get your hands on. And that's one of the things I really like about this book. So Calvin references Amy Lundy, and she talks about the power pose. So how does the power pose relate to life through the eyes of a smile?
Sure thing. So the way we carry ourselves has a lot to do with our emotion, and this is basically what Amy Cuddy's looking at there. So she's done a bunch of research where she looks at nice strong postures, so people in the more dominant poses. She puts them in a boardroom and gets them to take on really the posture of someone when they think of a real dominant CEO or someone who has a very high ranking profile basically in a company. And what she finds is some really positive effects within our body. So they look at 2-minute periods for this. So if in your life you hold a nice power pose for about 2 minutes, it translates through into your emotions. And on the other side, if we're more slouched over and we're in a bit of that more depressed state, that actually leads our emotions that way too. So we have the ability with our posture and how we carry ourselves to really lead and produce emotions. There's been a bunch of work done by Dr. Paul Ekman as well, who looks at more of the facial expression side of things, and he finds this exact same stuff. One of the things that I like to use if I'm not in the best mood in a day or I'm really having a tough time inspiring positive emotion in myself, I think back to a time in my life where I had a really good experience. And it's actually funny thinking about it now, because Happy Gilmore talks about going to his happy place in that movie. And it's just an absolute classic. And it's this funny place for him where he needs to go mentally to really inspire his best golf game. So he goes, transports himself in his mind, and he thinks about all the best things in his life happening at that point in time. And then it translates into his golf game and everything's fantastic. I thought that was a load of bogus, but after doing a bunch of research and really experimenting with it a bunch, it's so incredibly true. If we have a happy place in our mind, it can inspire positive emotion. So for me, that moment that I like to use was when I was in Hawaii last year, and I was on a scooter traveling along the coastline. It's one of my favorite things to do is to hop on a scooter and go to adventure. And I have this one image that's really burned into my mind. It's an actual entire situation where I was flying along the road, looking out, and I just had such a great positive feeling in my body. And if I think about that for 2 minutes, where I'm back on that scooter and I'm flying along, just loving life, it translates over into my emotions today. And a ton of the research that's been done is that we actually either lead with that power posture, which would be a real dominant, happy position, or if we just think back to a mental state in our life where we're really happy, we can reproduce that emotion. So it's a great tool to use if you're having a bit of a down day, is to think back into a time of your life where you're just super happy, and that will bring forward the emotion, and pair that with a real strong posture. So if you can think maybe it was a sporting event that you won and you were just on top of the world, if you think about the posture you had then, it can actually come back into your day to day and have some real positive effects on emotion.
Definitely. I think that's great to hold a positive image in your mind about a good time you had, having a good smile on your face, and also doing the power pose. So those are all good things. Okay, so one of my next questions is that, do you click connect or no? And there's a good chapter about this in Life Through the Eyes of a Smile. And they say that you're 1 minute away from a decision that could change your life. You could meet people that will totally inspire you, and a lot of the times this can be online because we live in the age of tech, so a lot of connections can be made online. And in Calvin's book, Life Through the Eyes of a Smile, he has a chapter in there about clicking connect. So would you like to dive into that chapter just a bit for those people watching this video?
Yeah, for sure. So we had the opportunity to meet on LinkedIn, and I can't quite remember what it was or who clicked connect, but I'm pretty sure it's because of your YouTube video. So I would have seen it come up in my feed, and I thought it was you're a very interesting person as well as inspiring. So for me, that's enough of a trigger that I'll reach out to the individual and say, hey, I thought you had some great content up there. I look forward to thought sharing in the future. And so it's basically that simple, where connecting with people on the online world doesn't have to be that you know them already. And I do a lot of LinkedIn training as well as in-person networking training. And this one always comes up, that do I have to know the person before I connect with them online? And I always say, absolutely not. Think about everyone in your life you know today. You had to meet them at one time or another, and you knew nothing about them. So really how that connection would have started in your life is you probably had a friend of a friend who would have introduced you, or maybe you were out just at a common setting and you thought someone said something interesting, so you would have followed up with them and talked a little bit more. Just like the online community, when we start building, we're going to see likes, comments, and shares really showing up in our feeds. And we're going to see some interesting stuff from people who we aren't connected with yet. So I always urge people to reach out, and if you see someone saying something interesting, that's all you need to then connect with the person and really make the first introduction, because you have a shared interest at that point in time. And if you think about your day to day, if you walk out there, that's really the common connector for people, is shared interests. We love people who are just like ourselves, and let's face it, you can have some really interesting conversation when you share interests. So for me, clicking connect was all about my time on LinkedIn and all the fantastic people I had met online. Ton of value. I can't say enough for LinkedIn, as well as some of the other social sharing platforms out there. I think they're absolutely amazing, and I encourage everyone, if you see something interesting, connect with that person, tell them you thought it was interesting, and carry on the conversations from there. And some pretty magical things can happen in the online world.
Definitely. Yeah, and if you're in the business world, you want to be on LinkedIn, Facebook, and even Snapchat, because you never know who you're going to meet or who's going to see what book you've written if you're not also having a social media presence. So
Sure,
that's
you gotta share. It's fantastic.
definitely a good takeaway, and that's definitely a good thing. So if I remember correctly, there's also a chapter about a funeral, your funeral. So this is a really good subject. How did you come up with this chapter for Life Through the Eyes of a Smile?
Yeah, for sure. So this one has a bit of a gateway into my networking as well. So I love to get out every single week, at least once. And when I was in the height of my networking, I was going out probably 3 to 4 times a week. And I go to events that I don't necessarily belong at from the forward facing. An example, really where I got the inspiration from this, is I went to an estate planning seminar really they had going on, or workshop one night at a funeral home. So I do not fit the typical segment that goes to an estate planning and really your funeral planning session. I'm just completely out of place at one of those. But for me, I like to go to those events because I find you get there. And the big thing about networking is always just meeting people and getting to hear their stories. So regardless of what the event is, you're always going to get to meet people and hear their interesting stories. So I met this one gentleman when I was giving a networking seminar, Benjamin Calica, absolute huge fan of him, and he invited me out after to this event. So that's where I ended up, and we went through a bit of a funeral planning there. It was more on the will side and getting into some more of the technicalities, but I couldn't help but think while I was there that this is a really good thing for everyone to be doing, not only getting the legal documents updated at that point in time, because it can be an absolute nightmare when you're going through it and you've just lost someone, but more from a perspective of what do I want to get done in my life. So when I'm talking about planning your funeral, there's a couple basic components to it. Is you want to think about that actual day and what pictures are going to be up at your funeral. So to me, this ties into real success in life would be those moments, because they're typically the ones we're surrounded with friends and family. We always have a big smile on our face. That lets us know that we're really doing the right things in those pictures. So we want to start thinking about those pictures and how to create those actual experiences in our life, because those are really what we're going to be remembered by in that point in time, which is really the highest points of our life. So think about the pictures that are going to be at your funeral, and then think about creating those moments. There's also a portion in there about thinking that the people you know today who are actually going to be at your funeral, those are very important people in your life, and that we should be looking to spend time with and really phone up and say, hey, thanks for being a great friend, or maybe it's your family. Just call them and let them know that you care about them. And also think about the people you haven't met in your life yet, and really the characteristics that they have, because those are the people you want to start surrounding yourself with. Really go out there and envision on the biggest scale that you can of really, who do I want to have in my life? It could be celebrities, it could be high-ranking political figures. I don't care who it is, shoot for the stars and really start looking for those types of people to bring into your life to actually create that stronger network. So I'm a big fan of planning your funeral. You can even get into more of the obituary side of things if you want as well. But really just think about those moments you want to create in your life, as well as those people that you have now to really appreciate in your life, as well as those people that you want to bring into your life, and go out there and meet them and make magical things happen.
That's wonderful. So before this book interview ends, is there something you want to leave the viewers out there with to remember you by and your book by?
Yeah, for sure. I guess the life through the eyes of a smile is a big concept for myself, and it's in continual tuning every single day. And I think that life is something that we should really treat as an experiment. So if you're in the day to day and you're not the happiest with what's going on, really pause to look back on your life and see what really doesn't make you happy. I find a real good exercise is when we're having real down days to write down what's really the source of that real unhappiness in our life, and don't ever forget about those things. Write it down and come back to it and really look at, here's something that I don't want in my life anymore, so how am I going to work away from it, and start really setting up that action plan. It's also very important to think about the things in our life that really make us happy. So if you're having a really fantastic day, write that down as well, and make sure you're looking to incorporate more of that in your life. And really just get out there and start testing things and just have a fantastic time. Check out calvinsimpson.com. The ongoing podcast is going to have a ton of great content where I'm going out there and interviewing people who really just don't subscribe to the typical life. They're the ones who go out there and they experiment every single day. They fall on their face. They have a ton of learnings, and we're going to be sharing some really great content there that's really going to help everyone to take something into their day and live that happier life. So it'll be live on June 13th. It'll actually be the first episode, and it's at www.calvinsimpson.com. There's a newsletter registration there. It'll be sent out through there. Also, anyone who signs up, I'm giving a free book away a month. So if the money's a little tight right now, but you're thinking about getting the book, if you sign up for that newsletter, you can potentially win one.
That is so cool, Calvin. Well, thank you very much. And in the link below, I'll post Calvin's information, so you should subscribe to him and connect with him and learn more about life through the eyes of a smile. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope all you viewers out there got a good understanding about this amazing book. And if you haven't yet, you should get this book and learn about life through the eyes of a smile. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.